Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. I have a bunch of children's review titles that are going to start out this video. I will have timestamps and everything down below, so if you want to jump around, you absolutely can. But for now we are going to go in age readership order. So from Allen and Unwin we have South with the Seabirds, Follow Four Remarkable Scientists to the Edge of the World by Jess McGeachin. This is a narrative non-fiction picture book. It is absolutely gorgeous and it is about four female scientists, Mary Gillam, Isabel Bennett, Hope McPherson and Susan Ingham, who in 1959 embarked on a voyage to Macquarie Island, which is a small island in the sub-Antarctic, and there they studied the wildlife on the island in order to understand it more. It was a really interesting read. One, I confess I did not know Macquarie Island was a place, and two, I did not realise the significance of Macquarie Island and the fact that it was an island where there's a lot of native wildlife that were threatened by introduced pests, and that as a result of some of the research from these four scientists, that a project was set up to try and rid the island of those introduced pests. So this is a really cool story. It's the story of the scientists, but it has fantastic maps, gorgeous illustrations, and information about the animal species on the island, as well as information about the real scientists, some facts on how you can become a naturalist. I just found this utterly delightful. It was so interesting and engaging to read. And this, I mean, you guys have heard more times than not that I really enjoy children's nonfiction. I love narrative nonfiction. I think in picture book form, it has such a beautiful way of telling history through story. Thoroughly love this, so thank you to Allen and Unwin for the review copy. Also from Allen and Unwin, I received a copy of Bravepaw and the Heartstone of Alluria. This is by L.M. Wilkinson, who is Lily Wilkinson. I have read many of Lily Wilkinson's young adult fiction. This is her foray into junior fiction / middle fiction. This is definitely on the younger end of middle fiction though, if you are thinking about who might enjoy this book. But this is the story of Titch, who is a young mouse who lives with her family and her village, and she dreams of being brave like Bravepaw, who is kind of one of their mythological heroes as such. But Titch believes that Bravepaw was real. And when danger comes to their village, Titch finds out that actually Bravepaw is and has been a number of people who have been brave and who have sought to defend their loved ones and their villages from danger. And she and her best friend Huckleberry need to set out to try and stop the danger from getting any worse, and it involves her leaving her home for the first time and going on an adventure, being brave and being caught by the enemy and having to escape and having to build allies. It's a really fun little story and I'm looking forward to the second one. So thank you again to Allen and Unwin for this copy. Actually, you know what? Let's just continue with all the Allen and Unwin books because I have two of them. Another one I have is High from Outer Space by Fiona Katauskas. This is the story of Alex, who wants to be a cartoonist and is trying to enter a competition but discovers that she's struggling with some ideas. Then she meets Hieronymus, or High, who is an alien who has come to Earth to study Earth's leaders and leadership, and attaches themselves to Alex and asks Alex to help them interview world leaders. Alex sees this as an opportunity where High can, possibly be inspiration for her cartoon, but together they have to work together on both of their projects and get to know each other a little bit more. There is a lot of fun antics and hilarious moments as High can only be seen by certain people, and Alex is one of them. So it's fun, it was quirky, perfect for middle fiction readers who want some sci-fi in their lives. I'm always looking for more science fiction middle fiction books. Thank you again to the publisher for this copy. And then also from them, this time in the young adult category, is Gary Lonesborough's new book, I'm Not Really Here. This is a contemporary queer Indigenous story about Jonah, whose family has just moved back to their father's small hometown. Jonah's mother passed away 5 years earlier from a heart condition, and leaving Jonah, his dad, and Jonah's two younger twin siblings. They're coming back to their dad's hometown to start over, to try and continue to move forward in their life. And Jonah is just stuck in that coming of age sort of bracket. He is in year 11, he is much bigger than the other kids, he is Indigenous and he is queer, and he is trying to find a place to fit in, which means making new friends, falling for new friend Harley and trying to make that work, and really wanting to, move forward and find the good in his life and find the positive things, but also struggling because being a teenager is hard, and being a teenager when you're ticking so many other boxes as well is challenging. So I really enjoyed this. Gary Lonesborough is a very very good author, and all of his young adult books have been amazing stories. So I'm really, really glad that I did get a copy of this to review because I have thoroughly enjoyed all of his work so far. Then from Hachette, I received I don't know if this is middle fiction or younger YA. It kind of straddles that upper middle fiction, younger YA category. And it is 6 Summers of Tash and Leopold by Danielle Binks. This one is about characters who start out the book in year 6 and are moving into year 7. So it's straddling that transition from primary school to high school. The story is told from the perspective of Leopold, who was best friends with Tash, or Ali Tash, from next door since grade 2. And then Tash had leukemia, and when she came back from all of her treatment and came back to school, she stopped talking to him and sort of their friendship fell apart. But now in year 6, it's their final year, they're graduating, and Tash turns up at his front door with a letter, and the letter belongs to a woman who lives down the road, who they've both been scared of most of their life, and they think that she's a witch. And Tash dares Leopold to deliver the letter. And so begins a summer in their life as they are building their way back up, maybe to a friendship, but to reconnecting. And also a lot of things are happening around them. Both Leopold and Tash, as they transition into high school, are struggling to make it to school. Tash is homeschooled, and Leopold, he's got a scholarship to a very prestigious school, but he finds that he's just struggling to get there and to stay there. And this causes a lot of stress with his mum and his uncle who are raising him. And then on top of that, in their neighborhood, there is a local building development that is going on, and it's affecting the neighbor who they delivered the letter to. And she is a character who deals with agoraphobia. And so there's a whole lot of things happening as all of these characters' paths intersect, and Leopold has to, figure out what it is that he wants and how he's going to move forward in his life, and what he's willing to stand up for, whether that is standing up for his neighbor or standing up for himself with school, or standing up for his friendship with Tash. And it was just beautifully written. It is definitely one where you might need some tissues. There's a lot in here to do with trauma. There is death of a child, which is historical and off page, but there's also people living with cancer and also anxiety. So there's a lot happening in here, but very well written, as Danielle Binks' books always are. So thank you again to Hachette for sending me the review copy. And I think that's it for review copies. Well, review copies that are children's titles. Moving into other things that I read this week. I read Cubs and Campfires by Dylan Drakes. This is the first book in his new series. It is about plus-size men falling in love, their queer stories. This one was absolutely adorable. It's about Luca and Arter, who meet in the middle of sort of the wild country. Luca is a journalist. He likes to write, sex-positive stories about queer people, and he's basically been told by the place where he works that they can't publish what he's writing because, censorship. And so he comes up with the idea to write a story about someone who, enjoys sex, spending the summer celibate. And in order to do this, he knows he has to remove himself from the city. And so he takes a job as a fire watch. And this means he's out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness for the summer. And there he meets Arter, who is a man who is camping. And we find out that there is something else going on with Arter and his connection to the Fire Watch as well. It's super steamy, it's very fun, very lighthearted, and was just a book that I thoroughly enjoyed. So I can't wait for the next book in the series to come out. Then I read Blocked by Elise Faber, which is the first book in the Gold Hockey series. This one is a hockey romance, and both of our protagonists are hockey players. So we have Britt and Stefan. Stefan is the captain of Gold Hockey, which is a team that is trying to build their way back up the ranks, I'm pretty sure. And Britt is a female goalie who has just been called up to the NHL. So in this world, women can play in the NHL, and it's just a thing. There's not many of them. And do you know what? I just like that they just went with it, and it's like, yep, she's been called up to play with Gold Hockey because they need a backup goalie. And it turns out she's really bloody good at her job. The team management for the Gold Hockey is atrocious, and Britt is blackmailed into trying to seduce Stefan because the team GM thinks it's going to bring excellent publicity to the team to have, the captain and the goalie fall in love. Meanwhile, there is a mutual attraction developing between the two of them, but obviously this is the external pressure that's placed on that relationship. So it's a bit ridiculous, but I honestly loved Britt and Stefan, and I really enjoyed the world, and I like the fact that, she's a woman playing on an NHL team, and that's just part of the world. So I'm very intrigued. I will probably continue the series at some point because I enjoyed all of the characters and I want to get their stories. But yeah, this was fun, and I'm glad that I ticked another book off my rare tibia. Then I read Lips Like Sugar by Jess K. Hardy, which is a Gen X contemporary romance. I've actually read the first book in the series, and I remember I really enjoyed it. And when I saw this one, I'm like, I need a book for my Buzzwordathon prompt, which is to read a book with like in the title. And I did have a book that I'd selected, but I just wasn't feeling like reading it. So this one came across my KU, and I'm like, you know what, let's just read it because I enjoyed the first book in the series, and I'm really glad that I picked this one up. So this is about Cole and Myra. So Myra is a baker in a small town, and we meet her in the first book. And then Cole is the best friend of the MMC from the first book, and he's come to town for his friend's wedding. And he meets Myra when he goes to pick up some treats from her bakery to take up to the property where his best friend lives. And she has just been confronted by her ex-boyfriend and his new wife, who are asking if she's going to the wedding and if she's taking someone, and she's just said yes. And Cole walks in and she's like, he's my boyfriend. And she's like silently looking at him to play along. Can you please play along, just because I need this in the moment? And bless him, Cole is an absolute sweetheart, and he just rolls with it. And then he ends up as her date to the wedding as, you know, fake boyfriend and girlfriend, and the whole thing was just really fun. Cole is a member of a very famous music band, which Myra didn't realize until that moment. And the really cool thing is just the way that Jess K. Hardy weaves so many things into it. So all of these characters are members of the Gen X generation. So they're older, they're all dealing with their own things. They're both parents. Cole is a grandparent. He has a new grandbaby, and Myra has a 14-year-old son. And so the two of them are trying to navigate their relationship in almost a long distance capacity, because Cole lives in Seattle and Myra doesn't. It also has great bisexual rep in here. And also I think Myra mentions her son is pansexual. And so the whole thing was just utterly delightful. And I mean, look, does it get messy? Yes, of course it does. It's a contemporary romance, but it was fun. And I need to just stay current with what Jess K. Hardy is writing because I'm really enjoying her books. I think if you like role-playing, you might like these books, not necessarily because they're the same in tone, and I don't necessarily think they're as good as role-playing, but in terms of having older characters, you know, with very believable stories and lives that are coming together and finding love. Like, I like that aspect of it, and I think those link together really well. I also read Live, Lark, Lurk by Elsie Winters, which is the most recent book that's been released in the Boundlands series. It's kind of like a side story. It's about Lilith, who is kind of an elven character who has an affinity for plants, and she's come to town to take care of a new nursery that I think her uncle has purchased. And she meets Alistair, who is a mothman, and he is growing these hybrid fruit plants, and that's how they meet. He also happens to be her neighbor on the floor above in her apartment, and they just slowly begin to fall for one another. It is utterly adorable and very, very sweet. I mean, it's a novella length story, but it's kind of a slow burn friends to lovers within that vein. It's swoony and steamy and just utterly adorable. If you've read any of the Boundlands books, you'll know exactly what to expect. Some of the characters from the Boundlands series do pop up, so there are cameos, and that was also entirely awesome. Sydney was in it for a bit, and she is my favorite character so far in the Boundlands series, so I was thrilled. But yes, highly recommend this one. And then the final book I'm going to talk about is Full Speed to a Crash Landing by Beth Revis, which is a new release science fiction book. This one I received an audio arc from NetGalley, and I'm really glad that I did, because I went back to look at the spelling of names. I'm like, I would have mispronounced absolutely every single name in this book had I read it with my eyeballs. I've actually just gone back to request the second book in the series. This was delightfully fun. It is a science fiction story that is set in space. We have two main characters. The majority of the book is told from Ada's perspective, and when we meet her, when the book opens, she's on her spaceship that's airlock has exploded open, and she has minutes left of life support. And after some back and forth, she is rescued by a salvage ship that is in the area. She is also a salvager, or she likes to say she's a looter, and she was in the area because a spaceship crash landed onto a planet, or crashed into a planet, didn't really land, it crashed. They're both in the area for the same thing, but the other crew is incredulous, like, how could you get here before we did, kind of thing, and they know what's on that ship that they've gone to retrieve. They think that she's just there as an opportunistic scavenger. But it turns out it's so much more complicated than that. Ada is very sarcastic and dry, and she likes to get under the skin of people. And as we continue in her perspective, and as she begins to help them with their salvage mission, she reveals that she actually knows more than them. And normally that kind of thing bothers me, because having a character tell you that they know what's going on but not actually revealing what's going on can be irritating. But I think it worked in this context, and maybe it was the audiobook, I don't know. I found that it really worked for me. And she is really getting under the skin of Ryan, who is kind of the leader of this salvage expedition. She kind of feels bad about it because she flirts with him a lot and she kind of likes him, but also she knows that she knows more than he does. By the end of it, this becomes a salvage slash heist kind of story. And then the story kind of flips. So we get the end of Ada's perspective, and then the last part of the book is all from Ryan's perspective, but it's the reports and the conversations he's having after the events of the book. And it was really cool, and it sets up the second book so well and the next meeting between Ada and Ryan. So I'm looking forward to that immensely. Like, this was so fun. I'm really glad that I requested it. And that is everything that I have read this week. In the comments, I'd love to know, have you read any of these books? Are you planning on picking any of them up? Feel free to let me know, or feel free to share the book that you have really read and loved this week, whether it's something you have read and finished or are currently reading. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a spaceship emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.